Welcome along to the first edition of Matchbook's Weekend Football Podcast for 2022. Adrian, Clarke and Mark O'Hare are back from their winter break. The Premier League doesn't have one, but we have one. AC, it's too late in the year to be saying Happy New Year, mate, but a busy few days with you for the FA Cup, obviously.
Yeah, it was. It's been a really busy start to the new year. FA Cup weekend was fantastic, wasn't it? I just thought there was so many exciting games, so many good stories. I went to Hull Everton, where there was almost an upset. It was a cracking game, and I covered Forest v Arsenal, which was not as much fun. Let's gloss over that one.
And Mark O'Hare, your first column on Matchbook Insights for 2022 is now up since Thursday morning. You've had 17 winners. Just to recap from last year, obviously, because we haven't talked about it in a few weeks, but I have to give you your dues. 17 winners in your last 18 selections with a 36% ROI on the season. I'm building it so much up now, Mark, that there probably is going to be a drop. But what are you seeing the first couple of weeks, even on the continent? It's been tricky, Mark, hasn't it? Especially in Spain, a lot of COVID cases. Obviously, it's very prevalent in Germany as well.
Yeah, it has been really, really trappy. And it is difficult. We've got AFCON commitments, particularly ravaging teams in France. We've got COVID issues. We've got fans basically being held back in German stadiums. The same is going to be implemented in Italy as well soon. I think actually this weekend it might be implemented as well. So, we're kind of back to square one really, and trying to figure out these teams and trying to work out home field advantage and all that jazz, which we were doing so at the beginning of the pandemic. It's quite frustrating, but hopefully I found a couple which I believe offer a little bit of value this weekend.
Yeah, and you have a couple more selections later on the show in our European selections section as well. 4 Premier League games we're going to discuss, and we're going to kick things off with the game of the weekend, the early kickoff on Saturday. Manchester City entertain Chelsea. And of course, the City win here puts them 13 points clear of Chelsea. So let's take a look at the betting as we have it currently at matchbook.com. You can back City here at 1.72, Chelsea at 5.3, the draw available at 4.1. Chelsea getting a 3/4 of a goal start on the Asian handicap, the main line there at matchbook.com at 1.99, just under even money. And the goal line is a middling one at 2.75. So I'll appear inside at 2.5/3.0, tilted towards the under there. And Mark O'Hare, I kind of touched on it there. I think, there's the big expectancy this week that it's kind of obviously do or die for Tuchel and Chelsea in the title race with this game. And with that, you kind of expect some people will get enamored with them thinking, they have to win. They're going to go all guns blazing here. But it is so hard to see past City here. And obviously we've seen in the first fixture at Stamford Bridge that while Tuchel has had Pep's number in the past, maybe Pep has caught up and he's figured out this Chelsea side.
Yeah, possibly. I think it's a fascinating match. It's unfortunate that the league positions between the two and the points gap is so big, because it's going to take a big implosion from City to blow their lead at the moment. But for me, I had to try and find some sort of positive pro Man City angle. They've won 14 of the last 15 across all competitions. Since the start of November, they've won 11 Premier League games on the spin. That includes winning at Old Trafford and the Emirates, beating Leicester at home. Not the easiest schedule, but they would have been kind of heavily favoured in all of those matches. But to win them anyhow is an achievement. So immediately you look at the 1.72 price for them to win. When they lost to Chelsea here in the Premier League last season, they actually went off at 2.08. That was the biggest price at the Etihad in 4 years. But there are reasons for that. City made 9 changes. It was in the middle of the Champions League semi-finals. They were actually leading that game 1-0. If you remember, Aguero missed that penalty and Chelsea turned it around after the break. It was a far bigger game for Chelsea, and City drifted massively before that. So can you kind of move between that 2.08 price to what they are now at 1.72? I think you can, because there was no fans at the Etihad in that match either. Kind of build in City in terms of probably having a much stronger 11 out, or a much stronger squad available for this match. There's a few other variables which I think go into their favour as well coming into this game. But to start with, obviously they're in one of those grooves now where they're just streaking these wins apart. And sure, Arsenal gave them a massive test in their last game, but I think there might have been a bit of complacency on the City side going into that game. We always beat Arsenal quite comfortably. This shouldn't be any different. And Arsenal gave them a real scare. They came through that test. They looked absolutely superb, as you said, at Stamford Bridge in the reverse game. Probably should have won that match more comfortably. Excellent as well against Liverpool at Anfield. And team news-wise, Mahrez is at AFCON, but apart from that, they've had COVID-related issues. But I think Stones is due back this weekend, Foden too. Many of their frontliners will be available. And data-wise, they've just been ridiculous this season. They're averaging 1.65 expected goals more than their opposition on a per-game basis, which is phenomenal, really. And if you plug those XG figures in across the whole campaign into a model, it will say City should be around 1.5 to win this match. So that's how dominant they've been compared to Chelsea. And they've got the rest advantage. Early kickoff on Saturday. Chelsea playing on Wednesday night in the Cup against their big rivals, or one of their big rivals. A quick turnaround. Sure, Chelsea had that game pretty much sewn up early doors, but it adds an extra layer of inconvenience. So the only negative I have really about City is how badly COVID affected that squad was, and also the fact that City don't necessarily need to win this game. But I think Pep Guardiola, he'll always send his team out to try and win a match, so I don't really read too much into that. But I guess the positive for Chelsea, surprisingly so, considering the narrative that we're fed, they've only lost once since September. That was at West Ham. It's a 23-game streak across all competitions. They've only won half of the last 16, though, and sort of their defence has kind of faltered a little bit recently. In the Premier League, they've dropped points in 7 of the last 11 as well. So I just think team news-wise, you take out Mendy, James and Chilwell, 3 of your first-choice 11, 3 very influential players for different, obviously, assets. I suspect Tuchel's going to revert to sort of shape, play relatively conservatively and utilise the counter-attack as best as possible. He got it wrong in the reverse game, so I think he'll be keen to kind of get back in the groove here against Pep. But yeah, I think of all the bets I looked at, I looked at various things. City just to win, City -3/4. I looked at Chelsea +3/4 at evens. I actually thought the best value angle was to take the bigger price and take City to win and under 4.5 goals at 2.08, which was the bigger price of the kind of few I did look in towards. If you fancy City to win, they're unlikely to run amok here. It covers all the top sort of correct scores here. The only ones you're missing out on are likes of 5-0, 3-2, 4-1. The goal expectancy is 2.85 in this match, which I actually think is a little bit high considering the circumstances. So I think City win this game sort of 2-1, 1-0, something like that.
And Adrian, Mark touched on it there in terms of Chelsea having lost in September. December for them was essentially a survival month, wasn't it? It was literally just get over the line. There was lots of draws, but they are still exceptionally hard to beat.
Yeah, they were really struggling, and they picked up points when they were not playing particularly well. But I feel as if they might have turned a little bit of a corner. I know that they're missing their influential wing backs, and that is huge. It really is, and the key, and of course the goalkeeper. But what I will say in defence of Chelsea ahead of this game is that they're tuned up. They've been active over the sort of Christmas and New Year period. You can look at that both ways, of course. You could say, are they jaded? But I personally think that they won the semi-final against Spurs in, if you got 5 gears, 6 gears, they won it in second or third. Honestly, they didn't really exert themselves too much. They were so much better than Spurs. So I don't think those ties would have taken that much out of them. They've got Lukaku up to speed. They've got Werner up to speed. They've got, I just feel that they're in a better groove at the moment than they were. Now, City obviously have been disrupted by COVID and the absence of Pep and a lot of the coaching staff. So how has that impacted their preparation? It's not been the same, has it, as usual? They've not had a proper match for a while as well, if you discount the Swindon Cup tie, which they were always going to stroll to. So I think you have to take into consideration, that City, there might be an element of rust or not ideal preparation from their point of view. I can't argue with any of the stuff that Mark was talking about. They've been unbelievable this season. What I will say is that their last 2 Premier League games against Arsenal and Brentford, they weren't very good and not impressive at all. So if Chelsea go there, and this is how I see the game. I see the game as this is Chelsea have to try and win, of course, but they must not lose. They've got to really show some pride and some fight. For City, it's less important because they've got this wriggle room. And I think that added focus will make this a really competitive game. I think Chelsea will be very much in the contest. I agree with Mark. I don't think it will be you attack, we attack. I think it'll be much more of a harder Chelsea to break down. So the 2 bets that I were looking at, I like the unders. I think the line is a bit high here for a huge game like this. Under 2.75 goals, under 2 3/4, 1.86 would be my selection, which would tally, I guess, with Mark to some degree with the City. But I just thought there was a little bit of value in Chelsea plus half a goal, 2.32. You get the Chelsea narrow win, you get the draw, and I think they're more than capable of getting a draw at the Etihad if City are just dipping, and if they produce a performance that we know that they're capable of. So those are the two angles I went with, rather than City, just purely based on the activity of Chelsea and the inactivity of Manchester City, potentially on the training ground as well.
Yeah, look, there's kind of opposite cases there, and there's also similar cases with the under there. So let's maybe take the under 2.75 as the official play here, and we'll see where we go from there. Again, this isn't going to be our biggest bet of the weekend by any means, but that is the selection, and under 2.75 at 1.86 at matchbook.com. That'll appear on site at 2.5/3.0. So basically split your bet. All right, Adrian, kick off with you for London Derby, but I will take a look at the betting first of all at matchbook.com. 2.62, you can back Spurs. Arsenal at 2.9. The draw available at 3.4. Draw no bet market here. You can back Tottenham here at 1.81. Obviously, if it's a draw, you get your money back in Arsenal at 2.1. And 2.5 is the total, and very slightly shaded towards the under. Adrian, been a slow start to the new year for Arsenal. Look, things aren't looking bad, but there's got to be obviously a bit of a worry about Tottenham just coming up behind with those games in hand right now as well.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, Spurs breathing down their necks a little bit. It's a strange one, isn't it? I mean, Spurs come into this game with the best record under a new manager. They're unbeaten in all 8 of their Premier League games under Conte. That's the best unbeaten start for a Spurs manager in their history, right? Yeah, I mean, tell Conte's face that last night when they were knocked out of Chelsea. I mean, he looked like a man that was absolutely demoralised with the job he's taken on. He was so fed up because he knows that the gulf between Spurs and the likes of Chelsea is colossal at the moment. And Spurs were poor, weren't they, in the FA Cup as well against Morecambe. They did get over the line once they brought the artillery on.
Are you insinuating that Conte is impatient, Dubs? I've never heard that before.
So that
Are you insinuating he's not patient, because this has been his knock in the past?
He's not a patient guy, is he? He's going to have to be. He's going to have to be at Spurs, because it's going to take a long time for them to get to the level of Chelsea, let me tell you. But you probably say the same for Arsenal. So just to balance things out. But yeah, it's a strange one at Spurs. No Son, I think, is huge ahead of this game. Son's been very, very dangerous against Arsenal over the years. I think Moura and Kane are the two to look out for. Other than that, I don't know who's going to hurt Arsenal in this particular game. As for the Gunners, obviously the form was fantastic, beaten unluckily by City, and then you get the cup game against Forest, and it was so bad. It was just dreadful, and it exposed the depth of the squad with the AFCON withdrawals, particularly in central midfield, where they had to partner Lokonga and young Charlie Patino, and they just were not at the races on that particular game. So if they turn up like that, then they'll lose this game. So yeah, in terms of the way to look at it, I think Arsenal can hurt Spurs down the flanks with Saka and Martinelli up against the Tottenham fullbacks or wing backs. I absolutely think they can hurt them there. I'm only really worried about Kane or Moura from a Tottenham point of view. So where I'm coming from with the bet, this is a hard game to call. As you can see, I'm pretty hedging around it. Both teams to score across the season as a whole has only landed in 6 Spurs games out of 18. For Arsenal, it's only landed in 7 of 20 games. Now, I know this is traditionally a high-scoring fixture, but I don't think Arsenal come into it in the best shape, and I certainly don't think Spurs come into it in the best shape. And there's a lot of stake here with protecting position. Spurs obviously want to make the most of their games in hand, don't they? Arsenal don't want to lose and be overtaken by Spurs and them have those 2 games in hand. So I think this might be a less absorbing match than we've seen in the past. For clean sheets, believe it or not, they're ranked 3 and 4 in the Premier League this season, Spurs and Arsenal. They've picked up a lot of clean sheets. And this is the stat that really interests me. For Spurs, 7 out of 10 home games, BTTS no has landed. And for Arsenal away games, 7 out of 10, BTTS no has landed. So when they're on it, they're both capable of keeping clean sheets. They really are, but they're equally as capable of having these odd off days. So yeah, I've landed on a very scrappy North London derby that I can't pick either way. where I feel that both teams may not score in this particular encounter because there's a lot at stake, because they're both depleted. So yeah, and I just think the price. This is price led as much as anything.
Yeah,
2.16. You don't often get a price that big, on a BTTS or a BTTS. No, it's a lot closer than that. 2.16 you can get on obviously one or both teams not scoring, and for me that represents the best value. Even though this fixture screams goals usually, I just don't know whether each team is at full throttle. Arsenal's midfield really concerns me.
Mark, I'm not sure if you have a major view on this game, but anything to add to the BTTS? No, because I think if I had to push you might be going another way in terms of the goals.
Yeah, I think Adrian's right. It's a really tricky game. It's a really trappy game to try and analyse. My tissue prices came out very similar to what the market is saying as well. So slightly more in favour of Spurs. Well, I think that's just because of the home advantage aspect of it. They've won 5 of 7 unbeaten against Arsenal head-to-head. They also have the 24 hours extra rest coming into this game. Arsenal playing Thursday night. And also, I think Conte had one eye on this match with his team selection against Chelsea on Wednesday. It was a few sort of curveballs thrown into that 11. So, I feel a bit like a mug after Adrian sort of outlined the potential for BTTS no, because I would have just gone BTTS yes in this match. I know the price is short, but Son missing it is a blow. But I thought the way in which Spurs attacked Liverpool, I know Van Dijk was missing that day, and the way in which they've gone about their business against the bigger and better teams is encouraging enough to suggest that they could rattle an Arsenal team without Partey in central midfield. I think there's definitely is a downgrade in that area. So, it's just traditionally this is a quite a frenetic game, isn't it, between these two teams? 6 of the last 7 derbies have seen both teams scoring, 11 of 15 in the Premier League going further back. Arsenal's last 12 in the Premier League have averaged 2.9 expected goals. Spurs under Conte, 2.59 expected goals. BTTS has copped in Spurs' matches with Chelsea and Liverpool under Conte. So, I guess as a neutral perspective, I'd be expecting goals and cards in this game. So that's the way I was kind of going. But I'd be brutal. It's not a game I want to have a really strong opinion on. I think fortunately for me as a neutral, I can sit back and just kind of have a few interests at bigger prices, and rather than kind of getting too heavily involved in this one.
Yeah, Arsenal just not really produced a performance yet at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, so it's very difficult to get on side with Arsenal. Even though they battered Spurs, didn't they, at Emirates Stadium? It was a really, really strong performance. If they put in that performance level, they would win this game, I think. But yeah, that display at Forest was quite alarming. People were talking about weakened lineups. It wasn't really. I mean, Leno was their best player.
Yeah.
Leno, Ramsdale. Obviously, Ramsdale's better, but there's not a lot in it. The only 2 players that were missing were Tierney and Lacazette, and they both came on very early. So for me, it was almost a full strength Arsenal labouring. So that is the worry there. But I watched the full 90 minutes of the 2 games against Chelsea with Spurs, and I was very unimpressed. So on that score, that's where I'm coming from with Spurs. I just don't see them as being as dangerous, although they did, as Mark rightly points out, play better against Liverpool.
I don't think we're going to have the bet here by the sounds, but that's okay. that is okay.
It's hard. I don't think I would. It's a tough one.
You know what? It's always about bankroll management, especially getting into January. There's a long few months here ahead yet, so we're just not going to put a bet in for that one. But you know what? If you're watching or listening today and you kind of have your mind made up in your own opinion, obviously, hopefully the guys will have added a bit of credence to those thoughts, and it might get you there in terms of a bet. We're going to do something a bit different this week as well. You guys have been in great form before the our own self-excluded winter break. We're going to put your best bets together. We're going to put it on matchbook.com under podcast specials, and we're going to top that price. It's going to be better than any of the sports books out there or whatever else. And you know what? If you haven't got a matchbook account and you want to get involved with that specific offer, use the bonus code INSIGHTSRF to avail of a £20 free back. So that's money back as cash if your first bet loses. So you know what? You can put it on the podcast special, the double. And if that loses, and they haven't been losing the last couple of weeks, you get your 20 quid back. So it's not too bad at all. Insights RF, Romeo Foxtrot, when signing up at matchbook.com. Insights.matchbook.com for full terms and conditions of that offer. There wasn't agreement in the last game, but I think there's agreement in the next game as Aston Villa play host to Manchester United on Saturday evening's kickoff. And Mark, I'll start with you first, but let's take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com. Villa here at 3.05. United at 2.48. The draw available at 3.55. The draw no bet market is the main Asian handicap line at matchbook.com. That'll appear inside of 0.0 on both sides. Obviously, United slight favourites here, 1.81, 2.08 on the side of Villa, and 2.5 is the total, slightly shaded towards the over. Mark, we haven't discussed United in recent weeks. I don't know, is there much of a buy-in here from a lot of the players? I think that's probably stating the obvious, to be honest, with the Rangnick system. And probably the one player who has probably bought into it, Scott McTominay. He looks like a big doubt as well. I think he's actually out for Saturday. You're opposing United here, surely, yeah?
I am, and the market is as well, because when I looked at this price first, I'm putting up Villa plus a quarter. It was 1.9 or just shy of 1.9. It's now below 1.8, and that's just 24 hours later. So I gather by Saturday it might even be shorter.
Yep.
I thought they were very, very unfortunate not to score, let alone avoid defeat against United in the FA Cup on Monday night. I think that was just a perfect example of football, low-scoring sport. You don't always get what you deserve, but I hope that sort of Steven Gerrard and his squad will use that as motivation, as fuel for the fire to go again against United and put things right this weekend, because they were all over United in that second half. Even if you exclude the VAR nonsense, they did enough to win the match, played with real belief, positivity, and I think it's clear to see really the impact that Gerrard has had on that squad. The only negative really I can find is that John McGinn is suspended. That's a blow, but I think the beauty of this handicap bet is the fact that Villa don't need to win to pick up some profit, really. You know, if the game ends in a draw, we still make a half stakes win. Villa don't draw many games. Their 8 games under Gerrard have been 4 wins and 4 defeats. The defeats came in very narrowly against Liverpool and Man City. Chelsea, in fairness, were very good at Villa Park, and the other one was against Brentford. But yeah, I think their performances against the best 2 teams in the country, as well as Monday night, should give them loads of encouragement to believe that they can get something out of this game. They're marginally behind United on expected points since Gerrard took charge. United have had a much softer schedule compared to Villa in that sequence too. And as you say, you know, things do seem to be turning ugly very quickly at United. Performances since that opening 45 against Palace have been poor. The reports emanating from inside the camp about players being disillusioned, unhappy, just stinks, really, considering, you know, the coach has only been there a matter of weeks, really. Something's not quite right, you know, all these leaks coming out of the squad. So, and on the field, they just look disjointed. They look disconnected, disinterested. And I think they're definitely vulnerable here. So McTominay and Shaw are suspended. I think Maguire might return, but they will require some reshuffling in defensive areas. But the narrative around United is so negative, and understandably so when you see some of those displays, particularly the home defeat to Wolves, where they were, you know, absolutely nowhere near getting anything out of that game, really. But it's quite strange, really, because if you look at the actual results since Solskjaer left, they've only lost 1. They've won 6 games, drawn 3, and lost 1 across all competitions, which is quite surprising considering the sort of doom and gloom surrounding things at the moment. But even still, I just think the way in which they're heading at the moment and the mentality coming out of that club, it just makes them, I think, vulnerable against a Villa team who are improving and are very well capable of getting something out of this game, as they showed on Monday.
In terms of the main handicap line, so obviously it's up on side at 0.0, but you can get Villa plus a quarter, Mark, 1.79. That's probably the way in terms there, yeah, for you.
Yeah. Villa plus a quarter. I bet that down to about 1.7.
Yeah.
So yeah, early prices were fantastic, but the market is moving that way.
Yeah, that'll happen sometimes. Adrian, pick it up there about United. I mean, it's when you see, like Mark said, the lack of energy, especially in that Wolves game. And like, you can put it down to the manager and them not buying into the system, but sometimes the players need to have a long, hard look at themselves too, right?
Of course they do. Yeah, it just looked like you have played in teams where you just don't really rate what the manager's saying. You don't believe in what he's asking you to do, and therefore you do it with less conviction. It's not like you're a non-trier, but you're not fully on board with it, and that's what it feels like at the moment.
But even there, Adrian, the whole interim tag probably doesn't help that situation either.
I've said this before, on another pod. I said that the United have brought this upon themselves because of the interim status of the manager. I mean, who are they playing for? They're playing to impress someone else for next season, aren't they? It's like, well, we'll see how we get on with this guy, but really, the only thing that matters is next season now under the new manager. It's a weird state of affairs. I don't blame Rangnick for putting out the system that he believes in, the imprint, the tactical ideas that he's got. I think over the long term, they probably are the right ideas for Manchester United. But some of the players are not in their most comfortable positions, and they just don't look happy with what they're being asked to do, and that is a major problem. Flip it around to Aston Villa, they're going to be buoyant. Think of the atmosphere inside Villa Park for this game. It's Gerrard, obviously, against Manchester United, so he'll be pumped. But they've just signed Felipe Coutinho. They've just signed Luca Digne. They're making serious, moves in the transfer market. Real ambition. There will be a feel-good factor and a feeling of excitement, I think, inside the stadium. And with that sort of noise behind them, even without John McGinn, I think that game the other night will have given them the belief that they can really get at United and really look to hurt them and maybe get luckier second time around. And I would fancy them to get a draw at worst here. I mean, United's away games as well have been really unimpressive. I think in the Premier League, the Newcastle they were rubbish. Got a 1-1 draw. They won at Norwich in a boring game, 1-0. I mean, no one beats Norwich just 1-0, do they? It's a shocker. So how fit is Ronaldo coming into the game? Obviously, he missed the cup one. So we'll see. But I think Villa will get a draw here at worst. So Villa plus a quarter was absolutely the standout when I was flicking through the odds here. Price isn't as good as when I first looked, but just like Mark, still on board.
Like we said, it's 1.79 on Thursday morning. Could be a lot less come Saturday afternoon. When the lads say Villa plus a quarter of a goal, it appears in sight at 0.0/0.5. So half your bet is on 0.0, which is draw no bet, and the other half is on 0.5, which if it is a draw, you get your full winners there, and you just make a void, and you just get your money back on the 0.0. All right, Adrian, your game of choice is a relegation 6-pointer, Newcastle against Watford. Let's take a look at the betting first before I come to you on this. 2.1, you can back Newcastle. Watford at 3.75. The draw available at 3.7. Watford getting a half a goal start at 1.86 on the main Asian handicap line. That keeps the draw on side. But in all honesty, Watford haven't been getting too many draws of late. 2.75 is the goal total and slightly shaded towards the under. And Adrian, 6 losses from 6 games, 6 losses on the bounce for Watford. Talk to me first about Newcastle's signing of Chris Wood for 25 million. But yeah, it's almost like, look, he hasn't got too many goals for Burnley this year. But is it like you're killing Burnley as well in that relegation battle? It's kind of a clever move for that kind of money.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a strategic move. I mean, he's not worth that much money, is he? No one on the planet would pay that much for a 30-year-old striker that scored 3 goals this season. I mean, come on. But I get it. They've weakened one of their relegation rivals quite severely, and they've plugged the gap of Callum Wilson while he's out injured. Now, we're led to believe the injury might not be quite as serious as first feared, which is good news for them. Ultimately, they could both play together, of course, Wilson and Wood. I did a piece on Chris Wood, actually. It's not out yet, but it'll be out for the Premier League website soon. He's sort of analysing him and the impact he could make for Newcastle United. It's aerially. I mean, he is, as we all know, he is really strong in the air. No one's won more aerial duels as a forward this season. I think he's the 3rd highest for the number of headed shots. When you think of Burnley, not being on the attack that often this season, that's not bad going. So, and interestingly, Callum Wilson was 4th for the most headed shots this season. So, when they're both fit and available, there'll be great incentive for Newcastle to whip plenty of crosses into the box. I think with Joel Linton there as well, they'll have real aerial power. He's a proven Premier League goal scorer. He'll be excited. He'll be lifted by the move. I think the Newcastle fans, they love a big number 9. I think they'll be really up for this game, even though they'll be tense. I fancy Newcastle. I do. I know that they lost to Cambridge. They're very unlucky. I mean, in the first half, they should have scored 4 or 5. Really, the Cambridge keeper was outstanding. I think overall, if you look at overall piece of how's worked so far, they are playing better. The performances are a little bit sharper, and Watford just can't defend. I mean, they are not good at the moment. They've been decimated by AFCON withdrawals, a few injuries as well, and still no clean sheets so far this season. Newcastle only got 1, by the way. I think that might be where Mark's headed. But even though they've got goals in them through Emmanuel Dennis, through Josh King, it was worth a goal, Watford. I just think they'll do really well to hold Newcastle out. I mean, Newcastle have only actually failed to score in 5 of 19 Premier League games. We know that they hardly ever win, but they almost always score. And I think they will certainly score against Watford in this match. 1, if not 2, if not 3. Both teams to score does land in 68% of Newcastle games, 56% of Watford games. So you could look at that. But for me, I'm strong on Newcastle. You know, it's kind of a hunch as much as anything. I just think that they will be really up for this game. Newcastle and over 1.5 goals. So that's taking out the 1-0 win only. Is 2.56. I think that inflates the odds quite nicely on a home win here.
Yeah, and Mark, just on that Newcastle price, you couldn't really be having them at 2.1. I get what Adrian's saying there, but in terms of, you know, what they have won, they haven't won a game in a while.
Exactly. So
it's a crazy price for that. Yeah,
you look at that and you think we've won once all season. How can you back Newcastle? This is a huge game, and Watford are leaky, and I just feel that it could be good opposition for Newcastle this weekend.
Yeah,
interested to see what Mark says.
Go for it, Mark. Tell us.
Big game, isn't it? Massive game. Looks like 3 from 4 at the bottom. So, you know, when these two teams, any two teams at the bottom 4 meet, it's pretty critical. And normally you would say tight, attritional, ugly, must not lose mentality, that kind of thing. But I don't think that will be the case in this match. I do think both teams will take a front foot approach. I do think both teams will believe they've got an opportunity of getting 3 vital points here. And I think that should give us a good game, really. And look, whether you look at recent form or season-long form, both have been pretty wretched. Both deserve to be down where they are at the moment. And personally, I'm quite happy to sort of leave the 1x2, the result alone completely, and instead focus on the goals because, Newcastle undoubtedly they are a little bit too short, but they will be stronger. You know, with Wood, with Trippier now in the side as well. I know Wood came off last week early in the FA Cup with a groin injury, but I think it was just precaution, so he should be available. And as Adrian said, Watford have been, a bit all over the place with their squad of AFCON injuries and COVID-related issues as well. So there is definitely probably an advantage Newcastle, but I think we're mid-January now. They've got all this money, and we've not seen any centre-backs or central midfielders coming into the team. The real spine of the side, where I believe is the massive weakness in that squad. Their championship standard, basically through the defence and midfield, and it's only really in forward areas where they've got sort of excellent players available. As we keep talking, just 1 clean sheet for them, 0 for Watford. But I think what Watford fans will say, despite not getting results under Ranieri, it's 10 defeats in 12 across all competitions. You cannot say the players aren't playing for the manager. And Watford fans will say there's much more kind of fun, entertainment following them at the moment. They're playing with spirit, endeavour. They do look quite loose. They do look quite aimless at times, and they have been punished for it. But I think going forward, they have been much more exciting. Plenty of high-scoring affairs as well. 8 of 12 has seen both teams scoring. 9 of 12 over 2.5 goals. In the Premier League, it's 3.72 goals per game. Under Ranieri, 6 of 11 going over 3.5. 5 of 11 going over 4.5. I don't think that will be the same. Well, I don't think we'll be sort of looking at that sort of scale here, considering the circumstances. But I think both coaches want to play forward-thinking football. Yeah. Both teams are averaging 3.2 goals across the whole season. We've said the lack of clean sheets, and both teams' XG averages come in over the 2.7 mark this season. Adrian's talked about the BTTS percentages. Newcastle have scored an 8 of 10 at St James's this season. We've mentioned Watford's record under Ranieri as well. I think when you've got 2 desperate defences on show and there's quality in attack in both boxes, Chris Wood, Sam Maximan from Newcastle, Emmanuel Dennis, Josh King for Watford, I think it strengthens the case for a BTTS bet. So kind of going against the grain is what you do in a 6-pointer, and I back both teams to score at 1.74.
Is there anything I could get you there with that? Couldn't I? The both teams score.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a slightly stronger lean on Newcastle to win the game, but it's not an easy one to call. And yeah, I do absolutely agree with the mentality of the game. I think both coaches are front foot. I think there will be goals in it. You can't trust either defence. Newcastle, I'll be staggered if they don't score. But equally, you'd maybe fancy a Dennis or King to get 1 too. So yeah, no, I can get on board with both teams to score. All good.
Newcastle have issues as well. I think Manquillo's suspended. Hayden's out injured as well. They are quite short sort of through the back 4 midfield as well. So yeah, just a couple of sort of red flags for me about them. But there we go.
And It keeps the 1-1 draw inside as well, just in case it's one of those ones where, Watford get that point and they say, all right, that's it. We've enough now. We won't be playing the swashbuckling style anymore. Let's do a quick recap of what we have from the Premier League game. So we're going to get to EFL and Europe shortly. But we have 3 bets so far. City, Chelsea under 2.75 at 1.86. We left Tottenham and Arsenal. There wasn't enough there to get to us for a bet. Some differing opinions. Villa plus a quarter of a goal at 1.79. And we just covered there Newcastle, Watford, both teams score 1.74. Full recap of those bets and the forthcoming bets can be found about 2 or 3 hours post-recording on Thursday morning at insights.matchbook.com. Adrian, Clarke, EFL, you're keeping in League One heavy this week. Wigan, Doncaster. It's tough times in Doncaster, isn't it? They've lost 8 of their last 9 in all comps, and they're 9 points away from safety. So obviously we're not backing them in here.
Not backing Donny, no. Gary McSheffrey's taken the gig, and it's a tough one. He's not got a lot to play with in terms of his squad. Not much experience at all, particularly at the back. And yeah, Wigan are sensational away from home. 25 points from a possible 30 on the road for Wigan Athletic this season. It's the best by far. 70% of those away games have gone over 2.5 goals. I think in the last 6 away games, this bet of the win and over 2.5 goals would have landed in 4. Donny lost 6 of 7 against the top 12 teams, right, this season. So against top half sides, there's been 36 points for Doncaster to play for, and they've earned 4. So that tells you that this is the sort of game they will be dreading. They've only scored 10 goals in 12 home games. Yeah, so Wigan to win is obviously too short, but Wigan to win a relatively high scoring game, just makes it eminently backable. So 2.22, I like that price.
Yeah, so that bet is Wigan to win and over 2.5 goals in that game. Sticking with League One, you touched on Doncaster's poor form. Bolton have lost their last 5 and we scored 1 goal there. And they're taking on Ipswich, and Ipswich are 2.4 in this one.
Yeah, it's a standout. I mean, okay, it's not huge. It's not a huge price, but for a go into a team that is in shocking form, and Ipswich are rejuvenated under the new manager. They're on that bounce. It's the Kieran McKenna bounce. Obviously, the former Manchester United coach has rocked up there, and it's been a really impressive start. They wiped the floor with Gillingham last weekend, which maybe it's only Gillingham, but the quality of the football, the passing, the movement, the quality of the goals was really phenomenal, I thought, for League Two standard. We know they're the Globetrotters of that division. They've got all sorts of big names there, and it feels like they're buying into what McKenna is doing. They've scored 4 goals away from home on numerous occasions. They did it at Pompey. They did it where else? At Wickham, and they did it at Gillingham as well, Ipswich. So when they click, they really do click. There'll be revenge in the air because Bolton beat them 5-2 at Portman Road earlier on in the season, and Ian Evatt is a really prickly character, and I think a few of the Ipswich players will look to get one over on him. As for Bolton, you look across the last 12 games as a sample size, they're the second worst team in League One. Second worst, only Gillingham worse. So that's a massive concern. Really strange times. 2 of their star players, Sarcevic and Doyle, have been allowed to leave the club mid-season. Doyle's headed over the pond. He's come over to Ireland, which is interesting. I think he signed for St Patrick's, I think, mid-season. And Sarcevic went into non-league. So it's a strange feel at Bolton at the moment. And this is and the manager himself said that the players were devoid of confidence when they were beaten comfortably at home to Wickham at the weekend. So all in all, I think 2.4 on the informed team beating the out of form team appeals to me. All
right, not a bad look there. Marco, here to Bundesliga. Bayern, a bit of a stuttering start to 2022. There's so many COVID absentees and different issues with AFCON as well. And you look at it. I think it was the back page of Bild over the weekend said, "Danke COVID for making this essentially a title race." But 6 points between Bayern and Dortmund just in January, that doesn't mean much. Let's be honest about it, because they tend to just go up the gears. Cologne have been a good watch though in the last couple of weeks, and the Baumgart is definitely getting a tune on them. 2 points off Champions League spots.
Yeah, remarkable, really, how good Cologne have been this season. But I do expect Bayern to bounce back, beaten by the bogey team Gladbach last weekend. But as you say, bit of a skeleton squad they had to field because
Yeah.
of COVID-related issues and injuries. I believe Manuel Neuer was in isolation in the Maldives, so he wasn't able to get back. But he has trained
Him
this
and
week.
Hernandez in the Maldives in a different place. Yeah, it was great
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. But Neuer, Upamecano, Omar Richards, Leroy Sane, Alphonso Davies, they've all trained this week. I don't expect all of them to be available for the game, but certainly probably 3 or 4 of them will feature, and it just makes Bayern so much stronger, particularly in defensive areas. We know that Bayern don't need to be at their best defensively or in midfield to really thrive. And up top, they've still got available Lewandowski, Muller, Musiala, and Gnabry as well. So I don't expect them to have any problems going forward. They're playing a Cologne side who've just kept 1 clean sheet all season, really, which is quite remarkable considering their form. Because they only lost 4 times in the league this season, despite keeping 1 clean sheet in 18. It's remarkable. They've only failed to score 3 times themselves. Anthony Modeste is in wonderful form aerially. He's one of the best in the Bundesliga too. So I do expect Cologne to cause Bayern plenty of problems, particularly in those set pieces and in counter-attacks. And look, this Bayern team have only kept 1 clean sheet away from home in the Bundesliga all season. They're not going to be at their best defensively. BTTS has been the right bet in 7 of Köln's 9 at home and 7 of Bayern's 8 away. But ultimately, Bayern have won 14 of 18 in the league. They're not going to be far off being full strength. And I just think in forward areas, they just proved too strong. So considering they're 1.38 to win the game, the boost to 2.38 is pretty significant. So considering that defensive record, I wouldn't expect. Actually, just the other thing I was going to mention as well, if you backed Bayern to win and over 2.5 goals, you're still only getting around 1.65. So the increase to 2.38, Bayern just need to score twice, both teams to score to see this land, I think is significant enough. And I think that's a decent angle. Bayern very rarely fail to win 2 games on the trot in the Bundesliga, and I think there's enough criticism going around for them to sort of bounce back after last week.
Yeah, they tend to do well when they're in a bit of a corner. Ligue 1, PSG, both teams scorers, but PSG potentially a lot of absentees here as well, Mark, with Afcon and Neymar's out, I think, and Messi as well.
Yeah. So same approach here, really. It's hard to believe PSG have won 14 of 20 games in the league this season, considering how they have played, because very seldom have they impressed or kind of play to the ability of their sort of globetrotters, really. So, but when they need to, they tend to pick up results. They were quite unimpressive last week in the draw against Lyon. Lyon were missing a few key players themselves, and look, PSG, as you say, have got issues with the squad, but they're still able to select an 11 or a squad which is the envy of the rest of the league and some, really. And at home, it's 8 wins, 1 draw from 9 across their last 99 home Ligue 1 games. They've won 81 of those. They've scored twice or more in 80% of them. Kind of unmatchable figures, really, for the league. So I expect them to win against Brest, who can cause some problems, in fairness. They've got a relatively decent squad available. No major issues in terms of AFCON, COVID or injuries. They've only failed to score twice all season in 20, and both teams to score has been the right bet in 15 of those. Mikhail Zakarian, the head coach, was previously at Montpellier, absolutely favours a front foot approach, likes his teams to get forward and score, and they haven't failed to score in their travels since April. They've scored in every away game this season. They've scored at Marseille, they've scored at Lille, they've scored at Nice, they've scored at Lyon. They'll absolutely fancy their chances of scoring in Paris as well. So the price is 2.54. The reverse ended 4-2 to PSG, and 10 of their 14 league victories this season have featured both teams scoring. I think, again, just a big increase on the 1.24 of PSG to win the game. Again, PSG to win and over 2.5 goals is around 1.57. So to get 2.54, basically Brest to score in a PSG win, I think is worth the poke, really. It's a tricky weekend across Europe, as I mentioned. There's attendance is reduced or no fans at all. There's COVID, there's AFCON. It's tricky, so I just tried to pick sort of 2 bigger prices on 2 favourites. So I do expect to win.
All right, just before we get to best bets, if you're enjoying this content today and you're listening on a podcast, please leave us a preferential review. It helps us get our content out to a wider audience. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up for this video. It does very much the same thing. Adrian, your best bet comes from the Championship. Middlesbrough and Reading, 2 teams trending in very different directions right now. There's a whole lot of optimism with Borlow and Wilder, and that they could get into promotion place, really young squad, and Reading just going the opposite direction.
Yeah, I didn't know a moment or 2 ago about an informed team meeting an out-of-form team, and that's very much the case here. Middlesbrough, except for this home advantage, obviously, for Middlesbrough against Reading. Now, Reading got battered, didn't they? 7-0 by Fulham in midweek. They went out to Kidderminster Harriers in the Cup. It has been a horrendous few days for Veljko Paunovic, the head coach, who made a really bad change in the game. He's got a severely depleted defence, a lot of injury issues. A couple of players came off early in the game, and then he took off a defensive player for a striker at 3-0 down, and it ends up 7. So I'm staggered he's not been fired, to be honest, on the back of that. If he is in the dugout for this game, which I guess he probably will be if it hasn't been done by now, I just can't see a turnaround. I think they were opened up so easily in that game, faced so many problems against Kidderminster. Just morale looks on its knees. And flip it to Chris Wilder's men. They're on fire. 5 wins from 6. Look across to the last 8 games. They're the second best team in the Championship behind Blackburn. They've got a really solid defence. Excellent unit there. Dykesdale, Fry, McNair, Solbamba's an option as well for them. Good wing backs. Strong central midfield, and where they've been lacking really is up front. But they've got 2 new strikers available. Aaron Connolly's coming from Brighton on loan, as is following Balogun from Arsenal, who I know for a fact Chris Wilder has been tracking for a long time. He's a huge fan of him. I'm not surprised because he's a really talented young player who I think with the right service can score a lot of goals in the Championship. And I just cannot see anything other than a Middlesbrough win here. And if you just pair it with over 1.5 goals, it's more attractive. It's more backable. 1.84 for me. That's a strong play this weekend. You couldn't back against Borough to win this game, and with such issues at the back for Reading and low morale, I don't see it being a tight game either.
Yeah, Mark O'Hare, COVID be damned. 2022 started off in Italy in a very similar strain. Goals. And 2 of the biggest proponents of the over bets in Italy, Sassuolo and Verona, they go head-to-head. So obviously we're not going to be backing an under here.
Unless you want a heart attack, no, I definitely wouldn't advise backing the unders. First things first, Domenico Berardi is suspended for Sassuolo. That is a blow. He is their sort of star player. But they're a team who spread the goals around, spread the firepower around. They should be well capable of kind of getting by without him. That's one of the red flags. And the only other red flag is the fact that Sassuolo probably haven't played to their fluent best or their eye-catching best at home this season. Most of their best performances have come on the road, including their 5-1 win at Empoli last weekend. A red card did help there, but they were superb going forward, just clicked and played some superb football. So, they're the 2 sort of red flags here. But I just think the way in which Verona are playing at the moment sort of plays into Sassuolo's hands. The last 8 games, they've won twice and they've lost 4. The most recent game was a defeat against Salernitana, rock bottom, unable to really buy a win this season. They beat Verona at Verona's place. And Verona's only wins in that sequence came against Spezia and Venezia, both battling against relegation. So not exactly great. They do tend to get a goal themselves. They are all right going forward. Igor Tudor likes his teams to play in an attacking manner, but defensively they are pretty atrocious, and some of the goals that they give away are laughable, really. But that's what we're after, really, is goals. Sassuolo's game is averaging 3.29, Verona's 3.43. Overs has landed in 17 of Sassuolo's 21. It's got the same hit rate for both teams scoring. Verona have seen over 2.5 goals in 15 of 21, and BTTS in 17 of those. The 2 teams have each managed just 2 clean sheets across the whole campaign, and the 2 teams have each scored in 18 of their 21 matches as well. And if you look at Sassuolo's last 15 matches, Overs has landed in 14, BTTS has landed in 14, and the 2 wagers together, BTTS and Overs, has clicked in 13 of those 15 as well. So they tend to be involved in entertaining matches. So, just surprised that the line is probably not a little bit higher, possibly due to Berardi's absence. But I think, all good to us, really. We get to back over 2 3/4 at
Where can I watch this game, Mark?
Sunday afternoon.
It's worth staying in for by the sound of it.
Yeah, it should be good. Looking forward to it.
I can't believe, Adrian Clarke. I think you have enough stuff to be watching at the weekend domestically,
Yeah.
mate, that you're not going to get time. You're not going to get time
No
to watch the
chance.
Serie A, mate. No, let Mark do that. Let Mark do that. Divide and conquer, I would suggest, is what we will do. Hey, just before I touched on it there earlier, guys, we're going to do this podcast special. We're going to top up this double. But Mark, I'm going to put it to you, right? Because obviously with an Asian handicap, we can't put that in there because it's a split stake. So if I gave you over 2.5, and that would make this double about 3.2, or if I gave you 3.5 and that make the double about 4.8, I think I know the answer. But go on, tell me anyway. So 3.2 for the over 2.5, and 4.8 for 3.5.
You know me, so it'll be 2.5. Just play it safe.
Sure.
Just straight back.
Okay, good to know. I'll get on that. That'll be up on site at matchbook.com from Thursday afternoon onwards up till Saturday, 3 o'clock. Adrian, Mark, good to be back, guys. 2022 off to a flyer. Don't forget insights.matchbook.com for a full recap of these bets and details of our sign-up offer. Until next Thursday, good luck with your bets, and we will talk to you then. Bye for now.